What's up, Chattionis? Happy Tuesday. Wonderful, aka I'm lying. It's not a wonderful day outside, but another day, another data. Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Let's get into chapter number 4, The Holy Fool. Number 1. In November 2003, Nat Simons, a portfolio manager for the Long Island-based hedge fund Renaissance Technologies, wrote a worried email to several of his colleagues. Through a complicated set of financial arrangements, Renaissance found itself with a stake in a fund run by an investor in New York named Bernard Madoff, and Madoff made Simons uneasy. If you worked in the financial world in New York in the 1990s and the early 2000s, chances are you've heard of Bernard Madoff. He worked out of an elegant office tower in Midtown Manhattan called the Lipstick Building. He served on the boards of a number of important financial industry associations. He moved between the mowed circles of the Hamptons and Palm Beach. He had an imperious manner and a flowing mane of white hair. He was reclusive, secretive, and that last fact is what made Simons uneasy. He's heard rumors. Someone he trusted, he wrote in the group email, told us in confidence that he believes that Madoff will have a serious problem within a year. He went on, throw in that his brother-in-law and his auditor and his son is also high up in the organization, and you have the risk of some nasty allegations, the freezing of accountants, etc. The next day, Henry Laufer, one of the firm's senior executives, wrote back. He agreed. Renaissance, he added, had independent evidence that something was amiss with Madoff. Then Renaissance risk manager Paul Broder, the person responsible for making sure the fund didn't put its money anywhere dangerous, waded in with a long, detailed analysis of the trading strategy that Madoff claimed to be using. None of it seemed to add up. He concluded the three of them decided to conduct their own in-house investigation. Their suspicions deepened. I came to the conclusion that we didn't understand what he was doing. Broder would say later, we had no idea how he was making his money. The volume numbers that he suggested he was doing were not supported by any evidence we could find. Renaissance had doubts. So did Renaissance sell off its stake in Madoff? Not quite. They cut their stake in half. They hedged their bets. 5 years later, after Madoff had been exposed as a fraud, the mastermind of the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, federal investigators sat down with Nat Simons and asked him to explain why. I never, as a manager, entertained the thought that it was truly fraudulent, Simons said. He was willing to admit that he didn't understand what Madoff was up to and that Madoff smelled a little funny. But he wasn't willing to believe that he was an out-and-out liar. Simons had doubts, but not enough doubts. He defaulted to truth. The emails written between Simons and Laufer were discovered during a routine audit by the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, the agency responsible for monitoring the hedge fund industry. It wasn't the first time the SEC had run across doubts about Madoff's operations. Madoff claimed to follow an investment strategy linked to the stock market, which meant that, like any other market-based strategy, his returns ought to go up and down as the market went up and down. But Madoff's returns were rock steady, which defied all logic. An SEC investigator named Peter Lamore once went to see Madoff to get an explanation. Madoff's answer was that essentially he could see around corners. He had an infallible gut feeling for when to get out of the market just before a downswing and back into the market just before an upswing. I asked him repeatedly. Lamore recalled later, I thought his gut feeling was, strange, suspicious. I just kept trying to press him. I thought there was something else. I thought, he was getting some sort of insight into the overall broad market that other people weren't getting. So I repeatedly sort of pressed him on that. I asked Bernie Bernie repeatedly over and over again, and at some point, I'm not sure what else to do. Lamore took his doubts to his boss, Robert Salazzo, who had doubts too, but not enough doubts. As the CEC post-mortem on the Madoff case concluded, Salazzo did not find that Madoff's claim to be trading on gut feeling was necessarily ridiculous. The SEC defaulted to truth and the fraud continued. Across Wall Street, in fact, countless people who had dealings with Madoff thought that something didn't quite add up about him. Several investment banks steered clear of him. Even the real estate broker who rented him his office space thought he was a bit off, but no one did anything about it or jumped to the conclusion that he was history's greatest con man. In the Madoff case, everyone defaulted to truth, everyone, that is, except one person. In early February 2009, just over a month after Madoff turned himself into authorities, a man named Harry Markopolos testified at a nationally televised hearing before Congress. He was an independent fraud investigator. He wore an ill-fitting green suit. He spoke nervously and tentatively with an upstate New York accent. No one had ever heard of him. My team and I tried our best to get this SEE to investigate and shut down the Madoff Ponzi scheme with repeated incredible warnings to the SEC that started in May 2000. Markopolos testified to a rapid audience. Markopolos said that he and a few colleagues put together charts and graphs, ran computer models, and poked around in Europe, where Madoff was raising the bulk of his money. We knew then that we had provided enough red flags and mathematical proofs to the SEC for them where they should have been able to shut him down right then and there at under $7 billion. When the SEC did nothing, Markopolos came back in October 2001, then again in 2005, 2007, and 2008. Each time he got nowhere. Reading solely from his notes, Markopolos described years of frustration. I gift wrapped and delivered the largest Ponzi scheme in history to them, and somehow they couldn't be bothered to conduct a thorough and proper investigation because they were too busy on matters of higher priority. If a 50 billion Ponzi scheme didn't make the SEC priority list, then I want to know who sets their priorities. Harry Markopolos alone among the people who had doubts about Bernie Madoff did not default to truth. He saw a stranger for who that stranger really was. Midway through the hearing, one of the congressmen asked Markopolos if he could come to Washington and run the SEC. In the aftermath of one of the worst financial scandals in history, the feeling was that Harry Markopolos was someone he could all learn from. Defaulting to truth is a problem. It lets spies and con artists roam free. Or is it? Here we come to the second crucial component of Tim Levine's ideas about deception and truth defaults. Take a pause there because I gotta go to class. But would love to learn more about that. I'd love to understand why he took more of an initiative to press the SEC, whether he had a different kind of strategy or he had a different kind of intuition about Madoff. But also very interesting to see that Madoff had some form of maybe manipulation, or to say that, you know what, this is just my strategy from gut feeling. I have a gut feeling that I can control the market, or I can understand the market better than anybody else. And everyone would believe that, but this one person. So we'll see. But I'll see you guys later. I think tonight is the last video to catch up, and then we're back on schedule. So, peace.